Sportsbooks have the Pelicans high on the list to acquire Jimmy Butler from the Miami Heat. Does Vegas know something we don't? Let's look at the fit of Jimmy Butler on the Pelicans, and I'll tell you the two biggest hangups to a trade. It's a Wednesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go!
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcast and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Wednesday, and we're going to look at the fit of Jimmy Butler. Does he make sense on the Pelicans? Because FanDuel and others have the Pelicans high up second on the list of teams to acquire him. The fit to me is a little bit odd. I get where they're coming from with this, and we'll break it all down in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And then I want to look at Herb Jones finishing fifth, which is really good, in Defensive Player of the Year voting. So, of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about the team. The plan has been to do Trade Target Thursday, but this news was just too interesting to look at, and I wanted to kind of jump on this one. So there will definitely be a Trade Target Thursday every single week this offseason until a trade happens, and even then, maybe other trades too we'll look at, because the Pelicans want to do a good bit of changing around with their team this year. And of course, make sure you make Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. And, of course, become an everyday or listen Monday through Friday, again, to the number one Pelicans podcast. So let's look at Jimmy Butler to the New Orleans Pelicans. Right now, FanDuel has him as number two, the Pelicans number two, just behind the Philadelphia 76ers. And Pat Riley recently put out some comments that more or less said, we're open for business on Jimmy Butler. The Heat being out of the playoffs, losing to the Boston Celtics in the first round. Jimmy Butler had some comments about that and said, and Pat Riley, the president of the Heat, said, if you're out of the playoffs, you got to shut your mouth and you shouldn't talk. For him to say that about his star player, the lead guy on the team, even though it seems like now they're kind of pivoting to Bam Adebayo, really says something here. And then all of a sudden, the odds jump up of who's going to get Jimmy Butler. And the Pelicans are second? Second. Think about that for a minute. In the next segment, we're going to get into what a trade could look like, because do you give up a lot for Jimmy Butler? Or are you trying to kind of get him for cheap? And I'm not sure what this would be. It's tough to figure out a trade. But let's look at fit. And there's two issues with this. One is on-court fit. One is other stuff when it comes to it. On-court, look, this is one of the biggest competitors in the league. When you look at a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves with a guy like Anthony Edwards, who just wants to literally be the best, who's driven in a way that even elite players aren't. Jimmy Butler is at times one of those guys. When he is playing at an elite level. I think we all agree with this. The way he's taken the Miami Heat to 2 NBA finals is a truly impressive thing. Dragging that team there, losing to the Los Angeles Lakers in the bubble, he dragged a team that had no business being in the finals to getting there. Last year, going from the play-in tournament to the NBA Finals, losing to the Denver Nuggets. That team had no business being in the finals, but Jimmy Butler can do a lot. So just to get a dude that's got that kind of killer instinct, that hyper-competitive nature is something. I don't think the Pelicans have a guy like that right now. You know, they might love to hoop. They say they love to hoop and all of those things, and they do, right? Brandon Ingram loves basketball. Zion Williamson loves basketball, but are they driven in a way that Jimmy Butler is, that Anthony Edwards is? And just getting a guy like that on your team kind of raises things around you, at least for a little while. More on that in a moment. You know, we've seen that Zion Williamson has said that watching Herb Jones play defense, more on that in the third segment, you know, inspired him to play better defense. All of those things. So getting a guy like this, does that rub off on someone like Zion? Could that rub off on Brandon Ingram if they're both on the same team? Those things are something that it's maybe worth looking at and just kind of bringing in that sort of mentality, that dude with a dog in him. But we're probably going to be looking at trading Jimmy Butler for Brandon Ingram in some capacity. More on what a trade will look like in the next segment here. Their numbers are kind of comparable. Last year, Jimmy Butler, 21 points per game, 5 assists, 5.3 rebounds per game, 1.3 steals, 0.3 blocks. So 1.6 stocks, blocks, and steals combined. He's an elite defensive player. So while maybe he doesn't give you as much offense as Brandon Ingram can, he gives you more on the defensive side of the ball, certainly. That fits in with what Willie Green likes, and this seems like it would be a guy that Willie Green would like and play. And frankly, given how things have gone with Willie Green in the past, that's a very good thing, I think. So getting a guy that he would like that, would be a Willie Green type of player, I think could be an important thing. But the fit is still questionable. And we'll start with this. He doesn't take threes. The issue with Brandon Ingram is he doesn't take threes. Jimmy Butler takes fewer threes than Brandon Ingram does. Way fewer threes than Brandon Ingram does. For his career, he's averaging 2.4 three-point attempts per game. And it's not great shooting. He's a career 33% shooter from deep. In Miami, it's even worse than that, about 30% on 2 attempts per game. Those aren't good numbers. Those aren't good numbers at all. Now, he shot well from 3 this year, 41.4%, but that number is such an outlier for what his career number is. Just pairing him with Zion Williamson, to me, I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. The issue was Brandon Ingram not fitting into the offense. Jimmy Butler ain't going to fit into the offense better. What he's good at is getting downhill and attacking the basket. He goes to the free throw line a lot, 7.7 times per game last season, what was a down year for him. Year before that, 8.7, then 8, then 8, then 9.1 his first year in Miami. Those are all very good numbers, and I like that. But you need spacing. You need the three-point shooting. And I don't see Jimmy Butler becoming a 6 to 7 to 8 attempt guy per night and doing it on a way, at a high enough percentage that teams are going to respect it. That's a big problem for me. That's why when I saw he was up on that list per FanDuel, I go, wait, what? Are you sure? That seems a little bit off. And let's get into that in the next segment. Why were the Pelicans linked to him? Because that's a little weird, right? Like the fit ain't there. Trae Young, DeJounte Murray. Let me explain where this is coming from. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about DoorDash because I'm going to make Mother's Day easy for you because I already made it easy on myself by using DoorDash. This Mother's Day, get something thoughtful for your mom. Surprise her from wherever you are with flowers, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. And guess what? You don't need to go to the store and buy things. You can just do it all with DoorDash. Your mom have a sweet tooth. You can get her chocolates. Does she want flowers? You can do that. A beauty connoisseur, get her gift cards, whatever it might be. You can get that all with DoorDash. And my favorite part, because this is what I did. My mom listens to Locked On Pelicans, so I'm spoiling this for her. You're getting some flowers. And you can schedule them out. You can have it be same-day delivery, or you can schedule it out up to a week in advance for when flowers and gifts should arrive to your mom's door with DoorDash. So Mother's Day is coming up. Make sure you're a good child and get Mother's Day right. So get all of your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the tools to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. You have someone missing in your small business, it puts extra work on other people. It's probably costing you money. You can't have that. You need to get not just the right person in the role, but the right person in the role fast. And hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates and quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours because LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn is a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. So LinkedIn has 2.5 million small businesses using LinkedIn for hiring. You should be as well. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And now for your second listen, go make sure it's Locked On Saints. Host Ross Jackson going to break down everything you want to know about the black and gold, looking at the draft, new QB, all of that stuff. They're covering it all over there at the Locked On Saints podcast. I'm going to see Ross tonight, and I'm excited to hang out with him. So let's keep talking about Jimmy Butler and what it looks like for the Pelicans here, because the fit, I think, is questionable. But why are they up there? The reason they're up there is everyone in the world knows they want to make a change. Everyone in the world knows they want to make a change. Vegas knows they want to make a change. So you're going to see the Pelicans linked to literally everybody. It's why we're going to do a trade target Thursday. And I'm not just picking random names. These are names that Vegas is going to put odds on, that FanDuel is going to have odds on, other things like that. It absolutely is going to be true because everyone knows the Pelicans want to make a sort of big move. They have a big name player in Brandon Ingram to trade and other first round picks they can include in a deal. And that's important too. So this summer, you are going to see the Pelicans linked to absolutely everybody, even if the fit doesn't make a ton of sense because of the lack of three-point shooting with Jimmy Butler. But I don't expect the Pelicans to get Jimmy Butler unless they can find a way to kind of get him cheap. But that's not easy. And this leads to the second part here of, I said the first reason why finding a deal is tough is because of the lack of three-point shooting. I just don't think the fit is there. And also, I could absolutely see Jimmy Butler clashing with head coach Willie Green and kind of creating some sort of locker room culture problem if things just aren't going well for New Orleans. He burned his way out of Minnesota fast. He burned his way out of Philadelphia, both of those after 1 year. He wanted out of Chicago. They traded him to Minnesota, and then he hated that and tried to force his way out and did. They traded him a year later to the Philadelphia 76ers, and then he hated it there, and he forced his way to the Miami Heat. That's not a great position. Not that I think the Pelicans culture is particularly strong in the locker room, but overall, they all get along and have a lot of respect and they're enjoying themselves, and there's something to be said for that. Does Jimmy Butler rock that boat, or is that even maybe a good thing to kind of rock that boat? There's potential for that as well. The other issue I think here is his contract. He makes a lot of money. He makes a lot of money, and this is an aging Jimmy Butler who had a down season this year who struggled to stay healthy. Next season, this coming one, when he would be on the Pelicans, $49 million. After that, he's a player option in 25-26 for $52.5 million. This is a guy who's 34 years, will be 35 at the start of next season, and that is an old 35 with the way he has played some minutes in his game. He has multiple seasons where he's averaged over 37 minutes per game. That's a lot. He only played in 60 games this past year, 64 the year before that, 57, which was a shortened year. He's only got 1 year, 2 years where he's played over 70 games. It's not ideal for the Pelicans. And he's coming off an injury-plagued season, and I don't know if that's a particularly great situation for New Orleans. He didn't even play in the playoffs, right, this year, did he? And that's definitely not what you want if you're a Pelicans fan, because that is how you absolutely don't get anywhere with guys that you need. And so that, I think, is something that is a massive concern for the New Orleans Pelicans, should that be the case. Did Jimmy Butler? No, he didn't play in the playoffs at all. Not a great position to be in. So that's why they're trying to move him. The other issue then is finding a trade given his salary cap situation. A straight up trade of Brandon Ingram for Jimmy Butler doesn't work. You would need the Pelicans to include more, but at that point, and I saw a trade out there that was Brandon Ingram and Herb Jones for Jimmy Butler. More on Herb Jones in the next segment. That doesn't make any sort of sense to me, and I wouldn't do a deal like that. If anything, I would be wanting to get more back for Brandon Ingram than just Jimmy Butler. And I get that Jimmy Butler is maybe overall in their careers the better player, but age factors in, durability kind of factors in too. And Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat kind of hurting his trade value also factors in. If I were the Pelicans, I'm open to this in some capacity. If you're trading, say, Brandon Ingram to the Miami Heat, but you would also want to get Jimmy Butler back. I'd probably like to get a guy like Jaime Jaquez Jr. back as well. So you could maybe convince me on a Brandon Ingram and Larry Nance Jr. trade for Jimmy Butler and Jaime Jaquez. I don't think you can really get a deal done where there's Duncan Robinson or Tyler Hero involved without giving up probably something more significant from the New Orleans Pelicans and adding more salary in. And that starts to get a little bit difficult. I mean, you could probably do something like, let's see if I adjust this trade here. Jaquez, Butler and say Tyler Hero so CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, let's see if this works. I don't actually know if it will. For Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez Jr., and Jimmy Butler, I have a feeling that will. That works. It's a little weird of a trade for me, but it works. You could definitely do something like that. And at least then you're starting to get into an area that makes sense. The problem with that then is, what do you do about the center position for New Orleans? And when we look at some other deals, there's going to be a center coming back for the Pelicans in any sort of Brandon Ingram or even CJ McCollum trade, or even both of them, right? Because you need that. Because you can't rely on Larry Nance Jr. as your starting center all year long. That definitely won't work. And you're also then, don't have money to necessarily replace Jonas Valanciunas. So if you do this deal, how do you go and get a starting center, a center that fits for you? That's, I think, something that they've really got to try and figure out. Like, how do you get a Jared Allen now if Ingram and CJ McCollum are gone? That's going to be something that I think is a big problem for the Pelicans here, unless you're going to do something after this, like Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance Jr. for Jared Allen and like 2 first-round picks. But I don't even think that's something that the Cleveland Cavaliers would do. And so all of a sudden now this team looks dramatically different. And I don't actually know if it's better. Tyler Hero on a 3-year deal, paid him about $30 million a year. I don't think is particularly great. Jimmy Butler is almost certainly going to pick up that team option, I would guess, for $52 million, unless he goes for a long-term deal. But I think he can probably get a good enough one after that season. But if he doesn't pick that up, then you're potentially looking at losing him and only having him for 1 year. Same for Brandon Ingram and Miami Heat, but you have to imagine they would certainly try and re-sign him. So have you upgraded your team? And I'm not entirely sure. So that's something that I think would concern me here with this Pelicans team. And that's why I just don't really see a trade making a ton of sense here. Jaquez gives you a lot of depth, I think, for, a guy like, Najee Marshall, who's going to be gone after this year, right? So you add some depth, you get 2 starters in the team that maybe just kind of fit a little bit better. Shooting in Tyler Hero is certainly going to be an important thing. He can definitely do that. But CJ was lights out to the playoffs, right? CJ shot the heck out of the ball from 3 this year until you got to the playoffs. But Tyler Hero can do that, but he can also score in other ways too. He's also younger, and there's something to be said for that as well. So who knows? And, you can bring him off the bench. He's won 6th Man of the Year before a couple of years ago, but he's been a starter the past 2 years, so maybe you can't really do that. But his assist numbers are good. The rebounding's not bad, but still leaves the Pelicans kind of without a ball handler, even though Butler can do that a little bit, and without a starting center. So this is kind of one of those deals that trades something that you don't want for someone else's stuff that you don't want, but kind of fundamentally is a very similar thing. And I don't know if that's the way that the Pelicans want to go with something like this. And also depends on how the Miami Heat value Jimmy Butler. If it's Brandon Ingram and good stuff, not just salary filler, but good stuff for Jimmy Butler, I'm not interested in that. Are you? Do you want Butler that badly? Do you want Ingram that badly? If, say, it's Brandon Ingram and Dyson Daniels for Jimmy Butler, that's the only Ingram deal on the table. Is that what you would take? Let me know in the comments down below. Coming up next, I said Dyson Daniels, not Herb Jones, for a reason. Herb Jones just finished 5th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. And when you look at it, it's actually pretty impressive. And this probably bodes well for the future in terms of the all-defensive team. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is, of course, brought to you by Monopoly Go, because I love playing this game. And I know what you're saying. You've already talked about that. You're trying to call a technical foul on me right now. But there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. I'm using the car currently. And hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day. There's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. You play on a bunch of different boards and you build them up. My favorite, the New Orleans Knights board. That's one in there. So there's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench, go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store and play Monopoly Go. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Tell a friend about the show. All of those things. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and we are not planning on slowing down with the offseason content anytime soon. So let's switch gears. We talked enough about Jimmy Butler. I just don't see a trade making sense. The three-point shooting, the contract, like none of that just makes sense. I think you're just going to see the Pelicans linked to everyone this year because we really know they want to make some sort of move. So let's switch over to the Defensive Player of the Year voting. Rudy Gobert of Minnesota won, and no real surprise there. Second was Victor Wembanyama. Also, no real surprise there. Rudy Gobert ran away with the votes. Bam Adebayo, third, Miami. Maybe why they're pivoting to him. Third in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Fourth was Anthony Davis of the Lakers. Notice all four of those are centers who tend to win Defensive Player of the Year. Not always, but they tend to win it. They're getting blocks, rim protections, very much a thing. And Rudy Gobert, this is his fourth. Very good defender. We get that. The first non-center on this list was Herb Jones, who got 2 second-place votes. 2 second-place votes is pretty impressive. 8 third-place votes. He finished with 14 total points. He was a distant fifth. Anthony Davis, who was fourth, has 83 points. Bam has 91, Wembanyama 245, and then Rudy Gobert, I said, ran away with it, 433. Herb Jones, though, fifth. Above guys like Drew Holiday, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Derek White, Giannis, Jared Allen, Alex Caruso, Sabonis got 1 vote, and then also Jalen Suggs in Orlando. That's really cool. Like, that's a really cool thing to finish fifth in Defensive Player of the Year voting and basically be considered the best non-center defender in the league. That's what it just said there, right? He should make first team all defensive team because of this. This voting says he should. If he doesn't and he's left off, that's real weird. And that means voters aren't taking this seriously enough and doing what they need to do. But this was some serious respect on Herb Jones and his name and his play here. And people kind of finally taking enough notice of it and giving him that sort of respect. He's been at this level. Takes the toughest defensive assignment every night, improved offensively without his defense suffering, which I think is also a really impressive thing. For his third year in the league to be getting, fifth place in Defensive Player of the Year voting is awesome to see. The Pelicans also did a good job, I thought, of really pushing his candidacy with the Not on Herb shirts, and they've sent some stuff out to voters and things like that. And doing that and kind of going on that PR, crusade for Herb Jones, backing him up, all of those things. It's what you want to do for your players. That's how they get some of this, right? That's called changing the narrative and enforcing the narrative and leading a narrative as well. And I think that's really important. So Herb Jones, based off this, it looks like he's going to make first team all defense. It's the all defensive first team is technically the world's wording of it. He should be on there based off of this. It would be shocking if he didn't. And that's going to be really great for him. That's something that I think is completely deserved. We want to see these players getting the accolades that they deserve as well. And these are important when it comes to legacy and things like that. We all know Drew Holiday, right? We know Drew Holiday really well and how good of a defender he is. And people around the NBA were like, Herb Jones better. Herb Jones is better. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think, is one of the better two-way players in the league. And Herb Jones basically doubled his voting, more than doubled the points that he got. That's awesome. Derek White has been incredible for the Boston Celtics. didn't touch Herb Jones in this one. Giannis, who had a down year, is one of the best, should have been in the MVP conversation a little bit more, isn't. Herb Jones, more votes than him. That's really a lot of people taking note in a position where it's really tough to be an elite defender. And now you're seeing the Pelicans do this. So this is truly an awesome moment for Herb Jones, for this team. I think this is something we should be really excited about when it comes to everything. And I'm excited to see what that's going to look like on the all-defensive team. Is he unanimous? Is he not? That's a really cool thing to see, and we should be really proud of this. Go Herb Jones, not on Herb, like one of our favorite players. I don't buy jerseys. I really kind of want a Herb Jones Black City Edition jersey because I think they just look awesome. And he's just such a fun player, especially with how he improved on offense. To improve on offense and not have it impact your defense when you're expending more energy on the offensive side of the ball, really great. Just says a lot about him. This was just good, happy news to end the show on. So that's where we're going to end it. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. I appreciate you all listening and watching. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. When we hit that number, we'll probably do something special. It's going to be a fun off season. Trade target Thursdays. Maybe we'll get more tomorrow. More to come on the show, though. We are not slowing down in the off season at all. So please subscribe. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This has been the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.